The last time I checked the standings, he was ranked 5th on the IndyCar circuit this year. I hope that he still is. We'll find out in just a moment. People have been asking me for a long time, when are you going to talk IndyCar on CLTV Sports Page? Well, folks, tonight is your lucky night. We are joined by a son of Phoenix, Arizona. Paul Tracy is with us. And Paul, thank you very much for making the trip tonight. We do appreciate it.
Sure.
Good to see you. Before we get to talking about auto racing, he says to me during a break, he does, you live in Phoenix or in the Phoenix area out there in Scottsdale. You don't think Charles Barkley is a good fit in Chicago?
I don't think so. I think you've got Scotty and you got Michael, who are the two big names here, and really Charles is a huge name in Phoenix. He kind of is the mecca of the sports establishment in Phoenix. He's the biggest star there, so too big of a name to take a third seat. A second seat would probably be tough for him to do, and to take a third seat would even be tougher, I think.
Well, there you have it. You have it from the mouth of the expert, so perhaps I stand corrected on this. Paul Tracy, our guest on CLTV Sports Page, and let's talk a little bit about the split, as everyone is calling it right now. This is Indy month, but you and some of the other better-known drivers on the IndyCar circuit are going to spend this month in Michigan instead of at the Brickyard. For those who do not know what I'm talking about, give us a little thumbnail sketch of what's going on with that split and where it all stands right now.
Well, it's really been a disagreement between the owners and Tony George, who's the president of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and come down to a disagreement mostly out of the qualifying procedure. He's reserved 25 spots in the field to his people that have committed to his series, the IRL. And you know, obviously we're running our IndyCar series and couldn't commit to running both series, so the qualifying procedure's been cut back to 8 at-large entries. And you know, it's qualifying in the past has always been the fastest people. Fastest 33 cars qualify for the race, and I wasn't with Penske Racing last year, but it wasn't a given that when Al Jr. won in '94 that he was going to be given a spot in the field in '95. He had to be fast enough to qualify, and subsequently didn't qualify and he didn't get in. So that's the way it's always been, and we feel that that's the way it should be.
I see. And so where does this stand right now? You and several of the other top-known drivers on your circuit have broken off, formed an organization called CART, and you are going to be running races during the course of this month right up against the Indy 500 in Michigan.
Yeah, we're running a race in Michigan International Speedway. So the race is going to be called the US 500, and all the big-name teams and drivers will be at, and sponsors will be at the US 500.
Who are some others? Give me a few names of some other drivers that'll be there with you.
Obviously myself and Al Unser Jr. and Emerson Fittipaldi. We have Michael Andretti. Talk of Mario Andretti coming out of retirement to run in the race, and you know, really the big name guys are all going to be there. The Scott Pruitts, Jimmy Vassars, and all the newer guys as well.
Now, someone who's been in this business a long time as you have, and obviously followed racing before you were a driver, does it seem strange to you to be in the month of May and not preparing to be at the Brickyard at the end of the month?
Not really, because this will be my 5th full season of Indy cars, and really I haven't had a real fond memory of any time that I've had at Indianapolis. I've never finished the race and never really had a good month there, so I'm never been real keen on the place. I just, maybe because of what's happened, but I'm not a real big traditionalist, so the most important thing to me is where the best drivers are, and it doesn't matter where it is or what the venue is. If it's in a grass field, if the best drivers are going to be there, that's where I want to be.
Well, that is really the interesting question that will be answered through all of this, and that is, do the folks come out, and people come out to see these races in droves? It is one of the most popular, if not the most popular, I believe, spectator sport in the United States. Do people come out for the event, the pageantry of the Indy 500, or do they come to see the best drivers in the world? And I guess in the next couple of weeks we'll get an answer to that question.
We'll find out.
And it will be interesting to see. I assume that you and your friends are banking on the fact that it's you guys that the people want to come out and see.
I think the people want to see a good race, and I think you know, you can watch AAA baseball or you can watch the pros. It's still a baseball game, but it's the name that they want to see. The people, I would think, the hardcore racing fan want to see the people that they know.
You're obviously a young guy, and by the way, I'm told that our lines are jam-packed, as I knew they would be, so we'll be getting the phones in just a minute, but you're obviously a young guy. You've been on the circuit now 5 years. Who were some of the idols that you had as you grew up in the business and got yourself ready for this? Who did you look up to?
Well, you know, obviously Mario Andretti and Rick Mears, and you know, really I grew up in Canada and watching road racing. The majority of it was road racing, in my age group, those guys like Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost in Formula One were really my idols.
Ayrton Senna, of course, who suffered a tragic, fatal injury on the race course, and that'll be my last question to you before we do get to the calls, and this is something I've always wanted to ask a race car driver, and that is the obvious danger. These fatal crashes tragically happen usually once, twice a year. You mentioned Ayrton Senna, and there have been others. How do you approach that as you step into your car before race? Is that something that you ignore, or is that something that you, for lack of a better term, get off on? Is there an excitement and sort of a rush that you get from that danger? I've always wanted to ask someone like that, so thank you for being here and giving me the chance.
It's kind of difficult, obviously, when something happens to somebody that you know or somebody that you know of. It's tough to swallow at times and tough to block out, but ultimately when you get in the car, you've got to have a clear mind and think about what you're doing, and you're the one that's under control. You know, the car's not in control of you. You work the throttle, work the brake, and work the steering, and it's at your discretion at how far you want to push the limit. And I guess, like in any sport, you know, the best will always rise to the top, or the guys that are able to push the envelope and push the car to the limit, or push whatever sport they do right to the maximum all the time. And I guess that's what separates the guys from the front to the guys to the mid-pack and towards the back.
Well, we will come back in just a moment, and we will continue talking auto racing with Paul Tracy. After the program, he and I are going to jump on the Eisenhower, and I'm going to race him back to the city. We'll take a break. We'll come back and go to the phones in just a moment. Stay.
The two guys did that were directly behind him, and I'm sure that they've seen what's gone on here earlier on with these two other guys, and they'll want a clean stop in and out so he can retain that lead.
Leader is in, Jack.
And we here we go. He's hit.
A real problem with Tracy. He hits the marks and he crashes right up against the wall, gets one of the crewmen, blocked it up, and the crewman is hurt.
Oh, I hate to see that. The one thing that's not protected in the pit stop, of course, is the crew.
The one thing that Paul Tracy said on the radio is, guys, I'm just so very sorry.
Boy, and that's just absolutely devastating. Paul Tracy looking over. I think he's trying to find Mac Johnson, Jack.
Well, right now, Paul Tracy is trying to get his car back under control. He does light it up, but this is a very difficult several moments.
Indeed it was, and we are joined by Paul Tracy now, and you mentioned, Paul, that was the first time you've seen a videotape of that incident which took place, what, about 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts as that happened. It had to be a horrible moment.
Sweating just watching. It's something that I didn't like to see, but luckily Matt was all right, and it was tough to stay motivated during the race because I saw the look on his face and how hurt he looked, but didn't know how he was, and then later on in the race they gave him a radio in the hospital bus. They propped him up in a bed and gave him a Coke and a bag of chips, and he was watching the race on TV, and he came on the radio and said, hey, I just want you to kick some butt, and got me motivated and charged up, and was able to, you know, pick up a lap that I'd lost and move back up into fifth.
Oh, good for you, and again, the most important thing, no one seriously injured in that, and thank goodness for it. Let's go on to the phone lines. They're jammed for Paul Tracy, Hanover Park. Our first stop, this is Linda. Hi, Linda.
Hi, how you doing?
Very well.
I just wanted to make a comment, and I have a question for you, Paul.
Okay.
My husband and I have followed IndyCar racing for the past 10 years, and we've gone down to Indianapolis for the whole month of May, and this is the first year we will not be going down there, and we are going to Michigan for the US 500.
Great.
And look forward to watching you race. My question to you, Paul, is what do you think will happen in 1997?
Well, I really haven't looked that far ahead. I mean, I've just been trying to concentrate on this year, and you know, I'm hoping something will get worked out, but I think the two parties are so far apart. I mean, they haven't even been able to agree to sit down and talk with each other. So I mean, until they get into even into the talking stages and agree that, you know, each side, I mean, it's got to be change on both sides, and until either one realizes that they need to, you know, make some changes from each side, then hopefully something can be worked out.
Do you anticipate a US 500 there in 1997 as well?
Well, it's hard to say right now, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Linda, thank you very much for calling tonight. We do appreciate it. I think what the sport clearly needs is a strong commissioner. No, that's baseball. Wait, I'm sorry, I got the wrong thing. Frankfurt is our next stop. Jeff is on the phone. Hello, Jeff.
How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm just behaving like a fool tonight. Pay no attention to me.
How you doing, Paul?
Good.
Just want to say that I'm a big supporter of you and the PPG IndyCar World Series. I will be at the US 500. I have a two-part question. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be asking questions about the the two factions, the IndyCar and PPG, but I'm going to take a turn and turn the clock back to '94 when you were with Team Marlboro Penske and Al came on his first year there. It didn't seem as though you two guys got along too well, and I'm curious to see how you guys are getting along in '96.
Well, I mean, that's something that I haven't really talked about at length at any time, but really it stems back to when I stepped up from replacing Rick Mears. I stepped right into the prime seat. I had Roger Penske running my car, and everything went really well that year in '93, and I'd won 5 races. And then when Al came on board, it was a little bit frustrating because Roger switched over to his car, and I kind of went from being in the prime spot to being the second man, and
Right.
I felt that hard to deal with at times. And you know, obviously Al was winning races and leading the championship, and I was having a bit of a struggle. And then halfway through the year, I kind of knew that they were going to cut back to 2 cars, and with Al being there and winning the championship, and obviously Emerson, who'd been with Marlboro for 25 years already, and it wasn't too hard to figure out who was going to be let go. So it was a frustrating year, and you know, I guess ultimately it probably worked out for the best. You know, having left and had a good year and then coming back, I was in more of a bargaining position to get a better deal coming back.
Jeff, thank you very much for the phone call. Obviously a very good question. To the city of Chicago now. Mike is on the phone. Mike, say hello to Paul Tracy.
Hi, Paul. How you doing?
Hi.
Welcome to Chicago. Greenie, good evening.
How you doing?
Quick question for you, Paul. I was curious to know how your Benetton test went a couple of years ago. I read some stuff about that Mr. Briatore was an awfully difficult man to deal with, and I guess they kind of gave you a take it or leave it offer right away.
Well, it really was, and I mean, it was a wonderful opportunity to get to go there and test and drive the car that won the World Championship. But you know, ultimately, you've got to do what's best for you business-wise first, and you know, just the opportunity wasn't the right opportunity to get into. I think looking at the move that Jacques has made, he's gotten himself into the right position to be able to test and you know, really fit in, and just I didn't feel it was the right opportunity, and I got the opportunity to go with Carl Haas, who's based out of here in Chicago, and we had a good year and won some races, and I think, you know, long term that was a better decision for myself.
Mike, thank you very much for the phone call. You wouldn't want to have raced for Benetton anyway because it's too hot for those sweaters, I would think, inside the cars. Tom is in Portage, Indiana. Tom, hi. Say hi to Paul Tracy.
Yeah, hi, Paul. How you doing? I really enjoy watching your race. I'm also going to be at the US 500, and a couple of things I wanted to ask you. One, it seemed like there at the beginning of the season, Honda really was a force to be reckoned with. Didn't look like anybody's going to have anything for them. But last week, it really opened my eyes what I was thinking, and just tell me if my observation of this is correct. It looks to me like the Goodyears have just stepped up, and I don't really think it's an engine thing. And the other thing I want to ask you, after the T-shirt thing at Long Beach, and then Michael went on to win the race last week, do you feel kind of foolish in light of your accident in the pits?
Well, first, to answer your first question, Goodyear has stepped up. They've committed more money to the program, and we've been doing a lot of tire testing. Before Long Beach, I was in Sebring, and then right after Nazareth, or right before Nazareth, we tested at Michigan, and then just 2 days ago, we were in Mid-Ohio doing tire tests. So they've really stepped up and responded in the last couple weeks. And to answer your other question, it's you know, the whole T-shirt thing was just in fun. We were just playing around, and Michael didn't really take it that way, but you know, it was just me, myself, and Robbie and Mauricio having a bit of fun and taking a bit of a poke at him, and he's obviously responded to it. I think he's realized and what's happened and refocused, and you know, he's definitely looks like he's doing a better job.
All right, Tom, thank you very much for the phone call. We appreciate it. We take another short time out, come back and get to more of our jammed phone lines with IndyCar driver Paul Tracy in just a moment on CLTV. We'll be right back.
Saturday.
See on CLTV sports page, our phone lines are lit up like Christmas trees, as my friend Mike North would say. And before we go back to those phones, something I need to ask you about here, Paul, and that is just how was it you originally became interested in this, and how you first got yourself involved in driving, which I'm sure a lot of our young people in the audience right now would be interested in knowing.
Well, I started out when I was real young. My first experience was with little mini bikes, and I was starting to do wheelies and jumps and all that kind of stuff. And my dad said, well, we better knock this on the head. And he went and bought a little go-kart, and we'd drive it around the field when I was like 6 years old. And I started racing competitively when I was 7. And it's really all I've ever focused on. And, you know, it's something that I always wanted to do since I started racing, and was able to follow through and keep focused through the hard times. And that's really was how it all started.
Terrific. Anyway, we'll continue talking about that, but let's go back to the phones that everybody wants to jump on. Crown Point, Indiana, our next stop. Sean's on the phone. Hello, Sean.
How you doing? Hey, hi, Paul.
How are you?
Good. I want to say I've been a long-time fan of yours. I got 2 questions for you. First of all, you've kind of been, people say that you drive too aggressively sometimes, and you might have cost yourselves a couple races because you overdrive the car. First of all, what does Roger say to you after that kind of race? And my second question, what kind of input does Rick Mears still have with the Penske team and yourself in general? 2
fine questions, Paul.
Well, Rick has a lot of input. I mean, it's incredible how much knowledge that he has. Obviously, he has a lot of experience, and that helps a lot, especially for me on the 1 mile ovals and the big ovals where I haven't got a lot of experience. I'm pretty good on the road courses, but he's been able to help me get my car set up, and really been a big help this year. We've had 2 pole positions on ovals, one at Miami and again at Nazareth, where I broke a world record for a 1 mile oval. So, I mean, that's really helped a lot, and really got me into really thinking about what I need to do to get the car right. And you know, really, I guess your other question about driving aggressively, I think, you know, Roger really doesn't have a problem with it. I think that's one of the main reasons he wanted to get me back on the team, is that I drive aggressively in any condition, whether it's testing or practicing, and try to get the most out of the car. And I think that was something that they were lacking last year when they didn't qualify at Indianapolis.
Next up is McHenry. Joe is on the phone. Joe, say hello to IndyCar driver Paul Tracy.
How you doing, Paul?
Hi.
My question is I run Barber Dodge, and I'd like to know how you do the kink, because I have a real problem with the kink at Road America, and I'd like to know the rumble strips. How many do you take up as you exit the kink at Road America?
Well, I mean, Road America's, the kink is a very, very fast turn. I mean, I've always been, that's my favorite turn of any track that we go to, and I've always been quick there. And every car that I've ever driven in I've been flat through there, or tried to be flat, but I'm not telling you to do that. So, but it's definitely a very tough turn, and the rumble strips at the very exit, you kind of want to stay off, because it gets a little bumpy out there, and if you dip a wheel off into the grass, you can get into some trouble.
That had to do it for you, Joe?
Yeah, that'll do it. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you very much for the phone call, Joe. We do appreciate it. I can't read my own writing. I think this says Anne Marie in the city, but I could easily be wrong. Is this Anne Marie?
Yes, it is.
How you doing?
I'm fine. I have, first of all, a statement. I'm sorry that Tony George has done this to racing, because we used to have a fabulous race in Indy and a wonderful race in Michigan. And I have a question for you about the drivers that are experienced in Indy this year. Have you talked to, like, Ari or Scott or any of those guys, and are they concerned about the safety this year?
Well, I talk to Ari pretty frequently, because we don't live very far apart, and we both live in Scottsdale, and we do a little bit of training together and hiking and stuff like that. And, you know, he's aware of the situation. Obviously, you know, there's a little bit of lack of experience. A lot of guys who are running this year, I think they have 22 rookies running, and obviously you've got to be concerned about that. But you know, he's really just focused on what he has to do to try to qualify well and try to win the race. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that he would like to be in the IndyCar series with the rest of us, but the opportunity wasn't there, and he has to, you know, obviously has to make a living and keep racing.
All right, Anne-Marie, thank you very much for the phone call. Let's sneak in one more before a commercial break. Hoffman Estates, Ben's on the phone. Hi, Ben.
Yeah, I was just wondering about
what like a typical race day would be like for you? I mean, how grueling it is and how early you have to get up and stuff like that?
Yeah, take us through a typical day on the day of a big race.
Well, you know, everyone varies depending on sponsor commitments, but Nazareth, this last race that we had was pretty hectic. I have a motorhome and I stay right in the track, so I'm there with the crew guys up till 8, 9 o'clock at night when they leave, and then I usually, you know, watch a bit of TV or watch some sports and then go to bed. And I'm up at 6:30 or 7. We have morning warm-up at 9 o'clock, and then at Nazareth, for example, from 10 o'clock till about 12:30, we had to go do sponsor engagements with Marlboro, Mercedes, and Detroit Diesel, and then got back to the bus, got changed, and instantly had to go out on the grid for driver intros, and the race started at 1. So it can be hectic at times, but some races are worse than others, but Nazareth was pretty tough.
Sponsor commitment. So I noticed the Hugo Boss emblem on the shirt there. Could you hook me? I mean, any chance you get the clothes there? Yeah. Because I mean, I'm always on the lookout for something.
You come out to Elkhart this year to see if somebody's around.
Oh, I'll be there. You better believe I'll be there. We'll take a break. We'll come back and get some more clothes and other things from Paul Tracy in just a moment on Sports Page. Don't go away. My sincere apologies to people who are still hanging on the phone lines. We just didn't have enough time to get everybody in, but I'm proud of you, auto racing fans who have been bugging me to get a car driver out here. You came through. The phone lines have been jammed, and I hope we can do it again, Paul, another time.
That'd be great.
Because we've got more calls than we could possibly have gotten in. The final question, a good one from Adele Brown, floor manager. What is the fastest car out there?
Well, I think American-made cars are either a Corvette or a Viper. But I think Ferraris, they've got the fastest street car, an F50, but you're looking at $1 million price tag. It's more than an Indy car, more than I can afford.
That's no problem for a man of his stature, of his financial. Now, I can get by the way, I can get my car out there on the Eisenhower, we're going to race. I can go about 70, 75.
I think I can beat that.
Where would that put me? If I were out there on an oval, if I were out there at Indy or Daytona someplace,